Hello, here we are at chapter 1, which is positive numbers, also integers, which would be the whole numbers, and the number line. We're going to work with the math fact mastery that you should already know, divisibility rules, prime and composite numbers, squares and square roots, and cubes and cube roots. The big idea is whole numbers, fractions, and decimals are numbers that can be represented in several ways, and we're going to look at the order that we see in God's world. So the number line is infinity. The infinite God produces the finite world. God is eternal, past, present, and future. We can give glory to God for how his works are displayed through his language of math. I can have confidence in the accuracy of my math answers when I follow appropriate rules, such as the order of operation, because God established knowable truths in mathematics. So remember, math is the language of science, and science we use to explore God's universe. I can recall prior knowledge that I already know, such as finding factors and multiples of a whole number. You should have practiced that already. Identifying prime numbers and using order of operations to simplify a numerical expression. This is some vocabulary terms that you'll go over this chapter. So as you find them in your work, you will write down the definition and then an example. If you want to do them ahead, you can certainly look in the back of your book and find those definitions and get those done ahead of time. There are some divisibility rules here for you if you need a quick review on those. They may also be posted in your classroom. And then we're going to go over and start lesson 1, which is over the number line. So we're going to be able to represent whole numbers, fractions, and decimals on a number line. Interpret and write statements of inequality for two given positive numbers using the symbols greater than and less than. We'll be able to reason through, construct arguments, and model mathematics. Okay, so we're going to learn to represent numbers on a number line. You guys can go through the Learn section in your book. It walks through it for you. So if you need a little bit more help, you can do that. We're going to work on some guided practice together. You'll also learn to write statements of inequality comparing two whole numbers using the symbols greater than and less than. Okay, so we're going to look at the first problem that we're going to do together. Is to write positive whole numbers on a horizontal number line that are less than 5. So our first job is to draw a horizontal number line. It doesn't have to be too long because it's just going to be positive whole numbers. So we know that our least number can be 0 because it's not positive nor negative. So that can be our stopping point on the left. Because the further numbers on a horizontal number line to the left are less, and the further we get to the right, they're greater. And then I just want my spacing to be equal, just like it would be fractions, so they represent equal parts. So I'm going to space them out as equal as I can get without getting a ruler out. And then I'm going to number them by whole numbers, because it said positive whole numbers less than 5. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to go one more. Okay, and then it says to represent them. So I can see that I have the numbers here, but in order to represent the numbers that I actually want, I'm going to dot the numbers that are less than 5. Okay, so I already told you that 0 is not positive nor negative, and they only want the positive whole numbers. So would I dot 0? What do you think? Talk to your neighbor for a moment. Most of you should be saying, no, I won't dot 0 because 0 is neither positive nor negative, so that means it's not a positive whole number. What about 1? Is it a whole number? Yes. So is it a positive whole number? The answer would be yes again. So I'm going to put a dot on that so it represents a positive whole number, and it's less than 5 because it's to the left of 5 on the number line. And then 2. I get a dot as well because it's to the left of 5 on the number line. If I happen to have 2.5 on my number line, it's a positive number. It is less than 5, but it's not a whole number, so I wouldn't dot it. So 3 would get a dot, 4 would get a dot, and then let's look at 5. Is 5 a positive number? Yes. Is it a whole number? Yes. Is it less than 5? If you think about it, your answer should be no, because 5 is equal to 5, but 5 is not less than 5. So then if you step back and look at your number line, you'll notice we have equal spacing between our numbers. We've dotted the positive whole numbers that are less than 5. So we didn't dot 5 and we didn't dot the 0. And then we put our arrows on the ends of our number line to depict that the number line goes on forever in this direction and forever in this direction. Okay. So again, if you need more help on that one, you can do the Learn section and walk yourself through a little bit more of a step-by-step process on that section. So you can find that in your book in lesson 1. And then we're going to represent fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals on a number line. But right before we do that, we're going to do a vertical number line to represent whole numbers. So we're just going to do that right here. So if we look at number 3 in your book, I'll just write it right up here. It says to represent odd numbers between 1 and 10 on a vertical number line. So vertical means it goes up and down like a column would. So then we have to remember on a vertical number line, the lesser numbers are lower, kind of like a thermometer, and the greater numbers would be higher. So if we're working with positive whole numbers, we know the 0 would be on the bottom. Okay, and this asks for odd numbers between 1 and 10. So we have 1 that we would put here, and then 2, and then 3, and you would number all the way up to 10. And then you're going to dot to represent the odd numbers. So 0 isn't an odd number, nor is it a positive number, but 1 is an odd number and it is positive, so you would dot to represent that. And then 2 is an even number, so we're not going to dot that. 3 is an odd number. 4 is an even number, so we don't represent that with a dot. And then you keep going. We talked about yesterday that the even numbers are 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. They would end in those. And then the odd numbers would end in 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9. So I can go all the way up to 9. But you'll notice that my starting number is the 0 and my ending number is the 10 because I went 1 above and below on both sides. I still have the arrow to represent that those numbers go in either direction forever on the number line. So that is your vertical number line representing odd numbers that are positive between 1 and 9. And because it says between, I know that I can start at 1 and go to 9. Some of those prepositions will matter, you'll notice, as we get further along. Okay, so now moving on to the fractions on a number line. You can see that we have a Learn section that says represent fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals on a horizontal number line. And then we have some practice on that. Okay. So you're going to do similar to the same thing if you have a horizontal number line. You're just going to draw the number line horizontally so you can follow one of the guides for the graph that was given here for you. And again, if you need a little bit more help, you can go back to one of the Learn sections and have it help you step-by-step guide it through after we're done with our lesson today, before you start your independent practice. So we're going to fill in the missing fractions and mixed numbers on the number line. Okay, so if we start our number line with 0 right here, and then I say this is 1 right here, and then this is 2, but I have these in between that I need to fill in. you should be able to tell me what fractions or what mixed numbers between the 1 and 2 that they should be. So I should know that these would start with 1 because I'm not yet to 2, but I'm past the 1. So these should have 1 with some fraction behind it, whereas these two would just be a fraction because it would be like 0 with the fraction. Okay? So how I can tell is I can count. This would be 0, this would be 1, this would be 2, and then I stop counting at my next whole number, so that's 3. So that I know that my fraction is going to be thirds. Okay? So I get that from my 3 right here. So I have 0 thirds right here. This would be 1 third. This would be 2 thirds, and this would be 3 thirds, which if you take 3 divided by 3, you get the 1. Okay? So I can write my fraction in as 1 third. This would be 2 thirds. And then I get my 1, which is what was my whole number. Okay? And then I have my next fraction, which would be technically 4 thirds. So remember, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5 thirds and 6 thirds. And remember, this was my next whole number at 2. So if you take 6 divided by 3, do you get 2? I know most of you are probably saying yes. So that's a check just to make sure you're on the right track. And then I just need to change these improper fractions into the mixed number. So I can just take 4 thirds and take away the 3 thirds, which would be the 1 for the whole number that I already have. And I get 1 third left over. So this first one is 1 and 1 third. Then I can do the next one, which was 5 thirds, take away the 3 thirds, and I have 2 thirds left over. So this next mixed number is 1 and 2 thirds. So that's how you can fill in your number line for your fractions and your mixed numbers that might be missing. Okay, and then if you have a vertical number line that has mixed numbers or fractions that are missing, it's the same process as we did with the whole numbers. It would just be remembering that the 0 is at the bottom, and then you do the same process that you did with the horizontal number line. Okay, then just making sure that you can compare with the symbols greater than, which is this one, or less than. So if I said 1 third, and then I said, is that greater or less than 1 and 2 thirds? Okay, I can't see place value necessarily. Some of you may understand the place value and know that since this one has a whole number attached to it, it means it's greater. But I can use the number line to look. So remember we said earlier that if it's further to the left on the number line, that means it's less. That's right, less. So it's less when it's further to the left, and it would be greater when it's further to the right. Okay, so if I look at my number line there, and I take, here's 1 third, and here's 1 and 2 thirds, and I say, well, 1 third is further to the left, that means it's less than 1 and 2 thirds. So I would fill that in with a less than symbol. If it was flip-flopped and I had 1 and 2 thirds is greater or less than 1 third, I would have to say that 1 and 2 thirds is greater than 1 third. Okay. So the only other caution I would say for this lesson is just to pay attention to your prepositions. So if it says between 20 and 32, or if it says less than 13, make sure you don't mark that 13. If it says greater than 6, but less than 16, you're not going to mark the 6 and you're not going to mark the 16, but you're going to mark the numbers between. Okay? So make sure you're paying attention to the wording carefully. That's it for this lesson, and your teacher will give you your assignment if they have not already.